would happen when the brothers would split, as each one would become fathers of respective nations and tribes. We at Diggin Deeper subscribe to the biblical narrative in that mankind does originate from Adam, so the idea that one language was spoken should not come as a surprise. In chapter 10, we learned about a kingdom, Babel, in the land of Shinar. Here, what we see is the descendants that came from the ark building a great city and tower as a rebellion to what God has commanded: be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth. The men that were building this tower used baked bricks and asphalt as mortar, which was strong and waterproof. And research reveals that this was the same material used to waterproof the ark. As interesting as building the tower is comes the fact that these men were building a waterproof tower, which illustrates they did not believe God when He said He would never destroy the earth with a flood. This is something that I had never caught before. But this is why we have to continue to dig into the Word of God. The idea, according to the Scriptures, was the tower would go into the heavens. And while it's hard to imagine the tower going to heaven, it could indeed be used to look into heaven. These people were arrogant, and they wanted to make a name for themselves, so while God did destroy the old earth as a result of sin, the new earth was seemingly becoming similar to the old earth. God coming down to see the city. And tower probably does not mean He physically came down, or even visibly, as God can see all things, but this is an example of anthropomorphism. As discussed previously, this occurred much in ancient writings, as human characteristics of behavior are attributed to a god, or God, and this is what is happening here. Personally, I believe that God is scoffing at the idea of man being able to prevent Him from doing His will, so He is playing along. God does say that nothing is impossible unto these men, meaning, when they are united there can accomplish many great things. This principle still applies today. But what we must understand is, more times than not, the hearts of humans are corrupt, so a group of people determined and united together to do evil is not a good thing. And when God says let us go down, this is a reference to the Trinity. The Trinity can be a confusing topic to discuss, as there is no perfect way of explaining it, and there are different studies already posted, but knowing just how evil and corrupt man can be, God decided to scatter them. By scattering them, this was not necessary judgment, but He divided these men in an effort to put a check on what they could accomplish. These men were divided with both their language and location. It's crazy to think about a lot of this stuff, especially language, because it is so deep and fascinating, but it's clear that man did not invent language as though it's ingrained into us. When these people were scattered, it must have been like pioneers, as they had to search for land and areas where they could live and survive. These people did not have any of our innovations or modern technologies, and very few of the innovations to come in the next few centuries, so going forth and multiplying was going to be a difficult task. Not to multiply, necessarily, but to survive would indeed be difficult. But from here, as the people were divided, they would develop their own culture. And this respective culture would influence their biological and physical characteristics. This is similar to when Cain dismissed by God, and he went out and founded another civilization, as he was a city builder, and while time and progress did improve for this civilization, like it did for the new civilization, man did not. In fact, it sounds like they're getting worse. And this is where we come to the second part of Genesis chapter 11, the generations of Shem. This particular genealogy is significant because it will become part of the messianic line, as this lineage will set up the people of the nation of Israel. Notice that of Noah's sons, Shem is the only one blessed by God. And we are told that Shem fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood, when he was 100 years old. And this will be the last mention of the flood in the book of Genesis, as this is a new era. Perhaps Shem having a child so quickly after the flood illustrates that he was truly blessed by God. Shem lived to be 600 years old, which gave him the opportunity to have many other sons and daughters. Note how Arpachshad was only 35 years old when he fathered Shelah, which is nothing to think about today, but for biblical times, this is very young, particularly before the flood. But one fact to make note of is the lifespans are getting shorter. Another example of this is Arpachshad lived to be 438 years old, which is half the ages of his predecessors. It does appear that this decreasing lifespan for the generations continues today, as the average lifespan is 80 years. At the age of 30, Selah would father Eber, which continues the trend of shorter lifespans and becoming parents younger, as Selah lived to be 433 years old. While we do speculate about why this is, we can only assume that it's either God intervening, a consequence of living on a harsher, less ideal planet after the flood. Perhaps both. The genealogy is coming together here as we read. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran begot Lot. These men will play large roles in the functioning of civilization to come. This genealogy shows that Lot is Terah's grandson, and the nephew of Abram, who are influential figures to come. Notice how Abram and Nahor took wives, where Abram's wife Sarai, name means contentious, was barren, unable to bear children. Names mean something in ancient society, particularly in the Bible. Abram means exalted father. But he had no children, so this must have been difficult for Abram to explain. What the next verses reveal to us is Abram came from a family of idol worshippers. And later, when Abram's grandson Jacob went back to Abram's relatives, they were still worshipping idols. Charles Spurgeon examines these events like this. They start together for Canaan. So far so good, at least, it looks so. The traveling is wearisome, and many are the murmurings. The huge caravan has not gone very far before the proposal is made that they should be satisfied with the move which they had made, and remain at Haran. True, it was not Canaan, but it might do as well. Notice the meaning of the name Terah, which translates to delay. Terah died in Hara, which translates to barren. This serves as a reminder that when we disobey God, there is much delay in our lives. And Spurgeon explained it like this. The result of this to Abram was the absence of privilege. God spoke not to his servant in Haran, neither dream nor vision, nor voice came to him in the place of hesitancy. The Lord loved him, but hid his face from him, and denied him the visits of his grace. We have reached the end of our Bible study today for Genesis chapter 10. We have experienced many great firsts in the first 10 chapters of Genesis, so there is no telling what the next studies will reveal, so join us next time for our Bible study here on Diggin' Deeper, as we simply dig deeper into the Word of God. I am your host, Billy Ray Parrish, and until next time, thank you for joining us. Stay safe and God bless.